Your on times now today. Srinjoy, to you first. Clearly, this is a matter of great loss for the entire country because we all remember the big liberalization, privatization, globalization, the big reforms of 1991, and he was the brain behind those. What is it that you would like to say on the kind of things that were said about him, especially when he became the Prime Minister of the country?
Well, first of all, looking at what he did as a finance minister, it was something that was necessary. And it was really necessary, and perhaps India would not be the India that it is today without those reforms of 1991. Yes, Dr. Manmohan Singh is definitely credited with it. He has the right to take credit for it, as has Prime Minister Narasimha Rao. He too was the one who cleared the way. And there were two names that were there for the Prime Minister, on the Prime Minister's table for the post of Finance Minister. And one of them was Manmohan Singh, and that was the name that Narasimha Rao decided upon. As a Prime Minister, it has to be said, his biggest achievement was in his early years, which was the Indo-US nuclear deal. Now, without the Indo-US nuclear deal, a lot of strategic advantages would not have accrued to us. Yes, what has happened in the 10 years after that has been very, very important. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi has to take enormous credit for it. But all these things that have happened, like the increase in what began as Malabar, the naval exercise, and it is such a big thing today, the fact that Quad is an issue, is an important thing as far as bilateral and multilateral ties are concerned. The fact that Indo-US ties are as good as it is today, the fact that there is talk of an Indian astronaut on an American spaceship, all of that, it begins with actually that nuclear deal. Because without that nuclear deal, India and America would not have got as close as they are today. In fact, even during Galwan, the Americans supported us with warm clothing and so on. So it has to be said that the American support and the American friendship, because India has also supported America, it's two ways, not one way. But it all began with the nuclear deal. And at one time, it looked like the nuclear deal would not happen.
Yes.
But somehow, Manmohan Singh wanted it badly. And as a Prime Minister, he will be remembered for that nuclear deal.
Well, absolutely. Very important point that you have made, Srinjoy. Stay on with us. Mohandas Pai, clearly, we all focus on his contribution as far as liberalizing the Indian economy is concerned, his contribution as the Prime Minister of this country. But, the focus it has not really been on foreign relations, on diplomatic relations of India with other countries, and also the defense issues, which of course, Srinjoy highlighted. I want to talk to you specifically about the way he shaped the financial landscape. What are your thoughts today? 2 or 3 things that you think, you will remember of him as the finance minister, as the Prime Minister.
Well, I have a particular respect for Dr. Singh because I grew up in the 80s when I started my career. It was the time of no hope for young people. There were not many jobs. Things were very slow, and things went on. The sun rose in the morning, set in the evening, and nothing much happened, right? And then in 1991, suddenly we had a political crisis, an economic crisis, and the new minority government under Narasimha Rao. And one day in the parliamentary session, when the budget was announced, a soft-spoken, frail person stood up in parliament and over the next 1 hour or so spoke out and gave us back our economic freedom. I say it's owed to Narasimha Rao, who understood the political implication, and Dr. Singh, who carved it out to give back our economic freedom, which was promised to us on when we got a constitution in 1950, right? And we never got a freedom because we were in the licensed quota Raj. Economic control was there in Delhi. There was deep corruption in government, and you could not do much. You're penalized for overproducing. And that is the sort of country. You couldn't travel abroad. You couldn't get foreign exchange. RBI, everything was controlled for us. We had to stand in queues for milk. We had to stand in queues for ration. We had to stand in queues for everybody. There was no telephone. It was a horrible existence. It's just that, let me say this, if you grew up then, you never realized that. You thought the world was like that because there was no hope. There was nothing new. Then in one fell swoop, he stood up and liberalized and gave us back our freedom. And he made a very important point. He said, nothing can stop the march of an idea whose time has come. His belief in the future of India was enormous. He liberalized, reduced custom tariff. He made sure foreign nation regulations were liberalized. He floated the rupee. He removed capital controls so we could raise capital easily and we could travel abroad. And tariffs were reduced from 175% of our computers to almost nothing. And he opened up everything for us. And it happened in the first 2 years. People were shocked, of course. And I could say, today, if you have a world-class IT service industry, which is bringing in $215 billion of services, which is the second largest digital power outside China in the world, it is due to the liberalization effort done by him. Because we were on both sides and we have grown. And GDP has grown from 275 billion in 1991 to 3.5 trillion today, 8.11% a year for 33 years. What he started off and what he did largely is responsible, and all others took it further in the days to come. And he liberalized banking, he set up the Nasiman Committee,
Yes.
and he made sure that industry licenses were gone, and most foreign capital could come in. Indian capital resisted for some time, which was right, because suddenly open up, people
Yes.
who have got access to overseas capital, people who have got access to cheap capital can come and buy us. And we
Right.
wouldn't have had many of our industries if it had not been moderated after the first 2 years, largely because the Bombay Club and the CPIM, which moderated. Because opening up is fine, but we got to be careful that we are not ready for competition. So how do you remember Dr. Singh? Now, when he became prime minister, he was, his age was advanced. He didn't have political power. He was put up there because the family wanted a person whom they trusted. And he was a great name. But I think in the first 5 years, there's economic growth based on the Vajpayee years. He did not do anything wrong. He did not bring in money. Economic policies are free as much further. He could have done much more. He brought in social policies, did very well. High inflation was there. And the second term, which he won because of the high growth of the first term, was a disaster for him. Because the syndicate got back. The old syndicate of the Congress got back. There was deep corruption. And he was personally attacked. It was painful for us to see attacks on his integrity. All of us stood up and said, he's a man of great integrity. Yes, there were people in his
But on that point, I like to say, what he said in 2014 when he was labelled, in fact, as the weak prime minister, he famously said that I honestly believe that the history will be kinder to me. And today, as we are discussing, our focus clearly is on the kind of reforms that he brought on the table, something that even Prime Minister Modi spoke about, that he will be remembered as a reformist, and he will always be respected for his devotion to reforms and his commitment to reforms. Interesting points you've made, Mr. Mohandas Pai. Let me go across to Sanjay Jha as well. Sanjay Jha, your memories of Dr. Manmohan Singh, any anecdote that you like to share with us? How should the world remember him as per you?
Good afternoon. I think a lot has already been said about Dr. Singh. If you look at the corrosive and the extremely bitter and acrimonious political dialogues of our times, you realize that he was like a breath of fresh air. If you look at Dr. Manmohan Singh, he was a leader who, frankly speaking, was a very decent human being, an exemplary character, his extraordinary credentials notwithstanding, a fine individual in a very ruthless and a bitter world of politics. So, in my opinion, the sheer character of decency, of culture, of character, of a certain integrity was like standing out. And I think all of us today who follow politics, what happens in parliament and TV debates will know exactly what I'm talking about. And that, I think, is unmatched. My second point is, it's easy to talk about just the economic liberalization of 1991. That was landmark, undoubtedly. Right. But look at the Right to Information Act, which I think brought transparency. And frankly speaking, it was a bold move for a prime minister to allow people to question his own government, to question his own bureaucracy. Look at Manrega. Today, I think India's social security scheme is lauded all over the world. Look at the right to food. the Food Security Act. Reforms is not just about liberalization and giving corporates a tax
Right.
cut or trade policy, right? It's about helping everybody in the country. Look at right to education. And you know,
And
one
also
of the
setting the
things-
foundation for the
Yeah.
right kind of reforms that we are now seeing getting announced. Of course, the foundation was set, years ago. I'm completely out of time, but thank you very much, both of you gentlemen, Sanjay Jha as well as Mohan Das Pai, for speaking with us. Thank you, Srinjoy, for your